I'm like, I know you're in high school. I know you're not smooth yet. I understand.
Welcome to Behind the Sins, presented by CinemaSins.
Welcome to Behind the Sins, your weekly look at all things CinemaSins, TV sins, and commercial sins. I'm your host, Aaron, but not that Aaron, of course, and this week I'm joined by CinemaSins co-founder, Chris Atkinson.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Voice is still a little not quite recovered from sickness, but, you know, it is what it is. Chris, it's good to, see you and talk with you. It's a really interesting experience for me right now because, having listened to you for the last, 10 years, and then, and it feels like I feel like a super fan at this point, and you're talking to a stranger. So
yeah, that's very true. That's true. It's always odd for me to hear that type of thing coming from anybody, like you saying, oh, I've been listening to you for 10 years and blah blah blah. I'm like that. I don't even register that type of thing. It doesn't make sense to me at all. So
sure,
but yeah, it's a pleasure being here.
It's just one of those things, after hearing years of rants on the Sincast and years of movie recommends and all that stuff, and it's just I know so much about you and you know nothing about me.
Yep.
Whatever, that's okay, we'll figure it out, we'll do okay. And we talked about our hockey differences, but you still agreed to be on the show, so that's good.
Yep, that's true. That's very true. I mean, it was touch and go there for a second, touch and go, but we were able to meet in the middle somewhere.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think as long as I'm willing to acknowledge that my team's going to suck this year and your team's going to be pretty good. So, you ready to talk about some of the content this week?
Let's do it.
So we'll dive into the SinSide Scoop.
What's he building in there?
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
This is a true story.
Starting off with Monday's video, She-Hulk 1x1, normal amount of rage. Chris, I have not seen any of the Marvel shows since Moon Knight because I'm just behind on all TV in general. So this was really fun to watch a video to a show that I really wanted to watch but just haven't yet.
Well, and same here. I haven't seen She-Hulk. I've seen this video, but I haven't seen the show. I was like, I'm not that far behind. And I started thinking about all these other shows that came out. And I'm way behind. I'm really way behind on all.
I mean, they're only 6 episodes apiece, which is nice. But there's so many shows. How are you feeling about just MCU as a whole then in the last couple of years?
It seems a little bit disordered. It doesn't seem like there's been that one movie that kind of says, okay, this is who we are now.
Right.
You've had stuff like Shang-Chi, which was a fun movie.
Yeah.
And then the Eternals, which was not. It was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where is all of this kind of culminating? Because they had that ball rolling for a good 15 years. And now they're just kind of, I don't know what are we supposed to watch and what order? And I mean, I think Loki establishes the next big bad, but it's weird. It's really strange.
Is there anything because I've been a Marvel fanboy for a while, significantly more than you guys. And so it's even hard for me to think of 3 or 4 projects that I'm really excited about. I'm really excited for Blade and Secret Wars. That's kind of about it.
Yeah. And Secret Wars is sort of your end zone to all the other stuff all the stuff that comes before is supposed to get us excited. Get everybody excited about Secret Wars. They have a tough task because all of the big characters have been introduced and they've had their own movies and they've had sequels and they have some residual from Thor and Hulk and all these. I guess I don't know if they're ever coming out with another singular Hulk movie, but
I would really doubt it.
But they still have some characters left over, but it just seems kind of like a mess to me. I know that everybody's excited about Secret Wars, but there's nothing, really leading up to that. That's we got to watch that. The COVID definitely hurt them.
Sure.
Trying to have continuity going into this next phase and having to push things back. And when they have these stories, they had, what was it? The story was that Spider-Man No Way Home was supposed to come out after Doctor Strange, I think, or something to that nature.
Yes.
Even though in Doctor Strange, I guess they filmed another scene afterwards where they refer to the stuff that happens in Spider-Man No Way Home. But yeah, they have that release schedule thing has been screwing them too, because they want to tell a continuous story and they want to like get you excited for the next movies, obviously every movie they come out with, and they keep having to push stuff back and rearrange some things, and it's got to be difficult. It's got to be super difficult to get all that arranged.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like a mess, but anyway, She-Hulk, a normal amount of rage. This is an Aaron and Danae script. What are some of the stuff you liked about the video? Some of the stuff that that you wanted to talk about?
So yeah, the few that I saw here were so neat, great. Can we get back to the person who was suddenly turned into a Hulk and is trying to process what this means to her life? I think that's a Danae thing, because I've written with Danae quite a bit. And it seems like a lot of the female protagonist movies and shows that we've ever done together, it seems like the movie tries to make it where the story is a jumping off point from somebody else, and it's usually a guy. And in this case, it's like, we want people to like She-Hulk, but let's make sure Mark Ruffalo's in there and like, you know, and bounce everything off of him. It may work. I'm not sure. I haven't seen any of the episodes, but I do like that observation. Then there is I love these kind of nitpicks. How in the hell has she been eating these silver dollar pancakes? Is she literally taking a single bite off of each one? Why are there 6 half-eaten silver dollar pancakes on this plate? Who only eats half a silver dollar pancake? And that's the type of thing that I love. That's really our brand right there, is when we nitpick something that just has no impact to the show whatsoever. When you talk about lamps, we talk about, you know, how many candles are lit in a room and all this stuff, and, you know, it has nothing to do with your overall enjoyment of the thing. I love being able to point out something like that, half-eaten silver dollar pancakes.
Well, it channels that like Rick and Morty energy of whenever there's food on the table in Rick and Morty, it's going to get sinned. Like,
absolutely, yeah. Because you know, and you know, these animators, like, look, I feel bad. I feel bad for these guys a lot of times. It's not meant to be a critique of them whatsoever. It's just I know that they're trying to get, you know, the bare minimum of stuff in a shot or whatever, so that they can. And we're talking about Rick and Morty now, but they're gonna need the bare minimum of something in a shot, you know, so that you can animate their characters and do the main stuff, and they don't care about the food. They just want to show that there's food there, and you know, give them a lot of grief over that nonsense a lot of times. Anyway, the last one that I wrote on here was, but first, shouldn't everyone be tended to? And he has like a ceiling beam collapses. People were nearly smashed by a desk. There's debris everywhere, and the jury likely needs to take a minute to reconnect with reality. We're all impressed that Jen has the emotional fortitude to bypass the shock of the attack and get back to the task at hand. But not everyone is going to keep pace. Maybe ask if everyone is okay first. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it was a perfect way to kind of end and cap the video. It was great because it seems ridiculous in the scene, but yeah, and there's plenty of like Deadpool references because of breaking the fourth wall and stuff like that. And it's just like I've heard a lot of people are having fun with this show, and I'm really excited for that. But like, it's fun kind of sacrificing what like. So I pointed out, because Daniel and I talked quite a bit about like, it's really funny whenever the writers channel these like pitch meeting kind of things where it's like, hey, like, what if we did this? Oh, I don't know about that. Like, or
right.
So for this one, there was that scene where what is the legal sense of hulking out? And they're like, oh, I heard that on a recent episode of Perry Mason, and it goes on for some
the Perry
time.
Mason one is great. Yeah,
it's I didn't write down the whole thing because that would be a paragraph and a half, but.
But going through the whole legal ramifications of hulking out was pretty great.
Yeah, and then just like the scene where she turns into Hulk and she's eating flaming hot Cheetos with chopsticks in a car, and like there's like a 3 or 4 scene rant, but like one of them is just like eating Cheetos with chopsticks in the car is worse than texting and driving. It's like, no, that tracks. That makes sense. Like, because you have to form the chopsticks, which already, like, I don't really know how to do properly. And then you have to hold the bag of Cheetos. Like, that's both of your hands occupied. Like, that's certainly more dangerous. And for what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you don't get Cheeto dust on yourself. Like, just be an adult and live with it. If you're going to be an adult and eat Cheetos, live with the Cheeto dust. I do. It's fine.
licking your fingers at the end of it is half the fun of eating those Cheetos anyway.
Yeah,
so,
it's double flavor.
Come on,
Yeah. And then the whole sin about where she walks into the bar and then it's, wait, do women carry around a spare pair of shoes with them? And they happen to be close to the right size. Even if both things are true, I'm still saying how complicated it must be to leave the house as a woman. Yeah, it's love it. Yeah. So I think I had a couple comments from random places. So I saw McDonald's on YouTube commented, "Give Discount Jeremy a break." I love how he's calling Aaron Discount Jeremy. It's great. About the whole genius level storytelling thing. It's hard to come up with an excuse like that when someone at Disney is pointing a gun at his head.
Yeah.
And kind of like we were talking to earlier, it really kind of feels like this is how a lot of the like shows kind of feel. Like there doesn't really seem to be a direction except somebody at Disney is holding a gun to your head saying, "Write Hulk into this," like, or like we need Loki to survive. You can't kill Loki, or whatever. Make a new Iron Man suit so we can sell more toys or whatever. So.
Yeah.
Good job. And then Ziggy on Discord also, he's like, all right, so you're going to make me be that kind of geek. She-Hulk did the breaking the fourth wall first, which also YouTube comments littered with all this. She-Hulk broke the fourth wall before Deadpool and all these defenses like that. And then I wrote this comment down just because Chris Atkinson writes, as always, the books don't matter.
Yeah, yep, pretty much. And the thing that I think a lot of people need to understand, this is going to sound so pompous and whatever, about CinemaSins in general, is you've got to pretend like everything you've seen in the past is before the thing that you have watched. Like, okay, so like, let's say I watched Deadpool for the first time after I saw She-Hulk. Well, then Deadpool's stealing from She-Hulk now. Everything that I've watched now, and I've seen it before, doesn't matter what came before and what iteration it came in. We're always going to do that silly thing, like it got stolen from this, even though it was 10 years ahead of when, we've done that a million times, where like something that came well before the thing we're saying it stole from, we've done that before. So it's fun, commenters coming on and saying, well, actually, and all this stuff, because it's that's sort of the fun of having these these videos in general. But a lot of times I think people don't realize that we're just trying to say, hey, I saw this thing first. I saw Deadpool first, and now this is stealing from that, even though if you want to go and do research, which we don't, if you want to go back there and do research and say, well, in the various primordial forms of these various comic books and everything, actually She-Hulk did it first, it just doesn't matter in the end.
Sure.
It's amazing how many times you'll write something and you're like, I'm not sure about this. That one thing that you wrote turns into this giant thread of comments about that. You didn't know that it was you didn't even know it was a thing, that there was an argument about this, but there always is. There's always an argument.
Yeah, man, it's a shame that YouTube doesn't have moderators, but
yeah. I mean, that would be a hell of a lot of moderators, but yeah, it is a shame.
The only question I had about the video is the eating a bean burrito and then going to yoga class. Is that fact or cap?
Okay, it is apparently a fact. I asked Aaron about this, and he said that is a true Danae story that she put into the script. So I personally would not have made that choice. But hey, sometimes, it's like that those Taco Bell commercials say sometimes it doesn't matter what's going on. You got to have Taco Bell. So,
live your best life, Danae.
Absolutely.
That'll lead us to Tuesday's video, Vampire's Kiss. I guess we kind of off the bat, this is you and Jonathan script. I just seems like an interesting video to release. I mean, I don't know that there was anything else coming out that you could have made a connection to. I like to think inside. Honestly, to me, the scheduling is just as fascinating as everything else, because you're like, oh, well, there's this movie that has this person that's also in that thing, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Cool. Is there a particular reason Vampire's Kiss came out this week?
Really only because it was a video we did a long time ago, about 6 months ago, when The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent was about to come out in theaters. We did 3 videos. Actually, I scheduled Pig to be the video to come out for Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And I was not sure if Pig would get blocked when we did it. So just in case, I was like, of all the movies that sort of tie into Unbearable Weight, Vampire's Kiss would be one because that's one of the all-time unhinged Nicolas Cage performances.
Sure.
So I wanted to schedule that. But then as I got in the middle of that writing, I was like, this may get blocked too. I'm not sure about this one. And so we also did Sorcerer's Apprentice, which that video got done and it waited for a second. And then it came out like the next month, basically as a filler video or whatever.
Sure.
So Vampire's Kiss was done and it was ready and it never got blocked and all that. And it didn't matter. I was going to go ahead and schedule it for October and just go ahead and have an October video for Halloween. And that's what you'll notice. There's we obviously have a huge Halloween motif every October. So that's the reason why Vampire's Kiss ended up coming out on the first week of October, was because of that. It's a spare video we had, and it's the time of season. So
yeah. So I've never seen Vampire's Kiss before, and based off of the Sins video, it looks like there's something interesting here, but I also can't tell if this movie is good or bad. So what do you think about Vampire's Kiss?
Yeah, it is one of those, right? In this case, this was my first viewing of Vampire's Kiss when I sent it. The thing that was incredibly interesting was I had heard what the plot of this movie was forever. Nicolas Cage thinks he might be a vampire, but the movie is not sure whether he is or not. But the interesting wrinkle to this whole thing is that it's got a whole completely different message in it. Whether he's becoming a vampire or not, I think the movie is already saying he kind of is a vampire, no matter whether there's a real supernatural thing going on with him or not, because it's about a toxic masculine workplace. Essentially, that's what the whole movie's about, and really toxic masculinity in general with his relationships as well. The movie itself is just watching Nicolas Cage just going crazy, and that's the best part of it. And this is before people really registered Nicolas Cage as this kind of actor. I would recommend the movie. It's just that there's going to be parts in it where you're sitting there going, yeah, I don't know what to think about this. I don't know if this is good or bad or what.
Well, that's what I was going to ask was, you seem to be unsure about the movie in a lot of ways as well. I mean, you seem to like the messaging. So my question was going to be, would you recommend somebody watch this or just watch American Psycho instead?
Oh, yeah. And that's the funny thing, because I swear to God, Christian, but we wrote this in the video. Christian Bale had to have watched this movie to get a sort of a feel of what, because Nicolas Cage in this is doing a lot of the things that Bale ends up doing in American Psycho. I would recommend both. I mean, that's a double feature, right? You could watch Vampire's Kiss and American Psycho, no problem. Sure. You will not feel good about yourself watching those movies back to back, but fair. But for sure.
In this video, I have if you told me Nick Cage would be rehearsing for an Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, I would believe you.
Yep. Jonathan wrote that one. Yep.
And then as he's going through his like A, B, C, I'm beginning to think this movie's not about vampires.
Yeah.
And then just A+ phrasing here, giving orders while making odors. There's a really, really good quality shit joke in both of the CinemaSins videos this week. Some that you and Chris, because you and Jonathan together on both of the videos, so like you guys just knock it out of the park for that, I guess. So
it's a lot of fun doing these horror movies with Jonathan for sure.
What's some of the other stuff you wanted to point out from the video?
One that I wrote that I liked is it's kind of too bad that this is Peter's movie and not Alva's. Because what are we rooting for here? That he gets cured? Because I'm not sure there's a cure for being an asshole. Okay. And it's one of those things where like, I don't know how good the movie would be if it was from Alva's perspective and everything. The entertainment of this movie is Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage, but it would be interesting to see her perspective rather than him coping with whatever he is or whatever. And I think that may be the missing ingredient is that even though this is a toxic masculinity movie, we're not really seeing her perspective. We're just seeing that she's scared all the time.
It probably would have been a more scary movie if they would have had it from Alva's perspective, because I guess you got this like looming Nicolas Cage might snap at any minute kind of vibe to it. Like, yeah, I think that'd be interesting.
Then Jonathan wrote, Alva acts surprised that Peter brings the contract up. I'm never going to side with Peter on any of this bullshit, but I still don't know why Alva is surprised by this. He's pulled this shit on her every time. Yeah, that is a weird thing that happens in a lot of movies where someone has just never shown any reason for you to trust them whatsoever. I don't know if this is this point. They may be at The Office, but there's a point very end. She's left the office. She's trying to get away from this dude, and he shows up at her door. It's like, I've turned a corner. I know I was an asshole. Let's do something about this. And she doesn't think it's about the file for some reason, even though that's all he's been obsessed with the entire movie. and every time he's shown that he's going to be nice, he has turned every single time. And like now he shows up at her door and she thinks, oh, well, then he must have really turned. It's really bizarre, man. But it's also, I think, part of the message that they are trying to put in this movie. Also on here, let's see, Jonathan wrote, if you wanted to know what Peter did with the pigeon, here's a 20-second shot of feathers on the ground, complemented by belching, just in case you need an overlong artistic explanation. It's one of those things, what's going to happen to the pigeon. You don't need to see like this long shot telling you what happened. So I like that a lot. I know I wrote the one that says, somewhere in New York, a helicopter pilot lifts off, unaware that someone in the city thinks he's a vampire. We will now observe this helicopter in its full glory because we wish we were that pilot. Because there are scenes in this where it's just taking a long time for no reason. And that was one. It's just a helicopter. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. We're seeing this full thing go into flight. And then Jonathan wrote, I appreciate the movie giving us an actual visual that encompasses everything that went into the making of this movie. Nose candy, eye candy, and Stella Artois. Pretty sure it was in NYC's tourist tagline in the late 80s. Yeah, there's a big New York drugs and alcohol party in this movie. And it looks like the very ingredients for making the movie were in that shot. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I wrote down to ask about was you really couldn't find anything on the poster outside Peter's apartment. Like, seems crazy.
Yeah, and one of the fun things about CinemaSins writing is when you see stuff in the background and you're like, I want to look this up and I want to have an understanding of it, and maybe you can come up with a comment. Maybe you can do something to write about this. And so, there was that poster in that's just outside of his apartment. And I was like, what is this? Typed it into Google, and this movie is the only thing that comes up. I think there was like some discussion back and forth, like a Quora forum or something that came up, but it appears to have just been completely invented for the movie. Unless it's just something that got lost to time. It's very possible that that's the case. Like, it could have been something that it could have been a flyer they found around New York City for all I know. So
fair.
So could not find anything on that poster.
Or at least you would think maybe they made it for the movie, but why not make something that's a little bit more like fitting for the movie? Something that's like a nice, you notice it and then you're like, oh, that enhances the movie a little bit. Right?
Yeah. It has something to do with what's going on, but this was just kind of went nowhere.
Yeah. I didn't write it down, but I just appreciated where because there's a scene where he's watching Nosferatu, and so it's just like, why is there always a better vampire movie in every vampire movie? Now we just wish I was watching that one. In Scream, they're watching Halloween, and that like maybe is the only example of the movie that you're watching is better than that. Not better. At least equal playing.
It's on par. Yeah, it's always, to me, those are always directors saying, this is a movie I was influenced by that I love. Let's put this in here.
Right.
When you aim that high too, that's the thing. If you have Nosferatu on, then obviously it's always going to be, there's hardly anything that's going to beat that. So,
well, there's like 3 good vampire movies out there total.
It might be right. It might be true. And 2 of them are called Nosferatu.
Well, that'll take us to Wednesday's video. This is Rick and Morty, the new season of Rick and Morty, Solaricks. Ian and Jonathan writing on this one. Chris, you were kind of like the pioneer for Rick and Morty on the Sins team, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I did, in the Sincast days, recommend Rick and Morty. I think it was in its 3rd season at that point.
Well, I guess I just more so meant to say, like, I think you were an early adopter and I definitely tried to introduce Jeremy and Barrett to it, but
yeah, it was, for me, it took, I don't know how long it had gotten into its run before I started watching. I'm going to say that I'm proud to have not been one of those you have to be smart to enjoy it Rick and Morty fans that was out there. I don't get that. I've never gotten that kind of fandom. Never understood it, and why it's such a badge of honor for a lot of people to be that way. Enjoying something is one thing, but being to that point, I don't think I'll ever get to that kind of excitement about anything.
I feel that way. I feel that way about hockey. Like, there's lots of people that are just like, hockey's only good to watch other fights. I'm like, fights ruin the sport. Anyway,
yeah. Maybe minor league hockey. Minor league hockey.
Sure, right. Beer league hockey, absolutely, yeah. But no.
Exactly.
So Rick and Morty.
Yeah. So yeah,
acting like the Citadel being gone is a bad thing. We've been there enough. Yeah. Pretty sure we all felt a disturbance of that singular individual that just yelled at the screen, "Those aren't Wolverine claws," and then continuing the same thing.
Yep.
Like, actually, but X-23 does take the mantle. That felt like Ian channeling sort of a nitpicking the nitpickers just in advance.
Yeah.
Like, I know people are gonna yell at me for this, so I'll just go ahead and debunk you in the video.
Right.
And a sin that I personally just like strikes me because this is my favorite Batman storyline. But Batman doesn't abandon people. Jason Todd has entered the chat.
Yeah.
And then the reading is just perfect here. But you're like a suicide bomber. It's like, do they often do the thing more than once?
Yes. Yes.
And then, why did you bring that thing to our house? It was cute. Fuck. And then the father-son conversation when my younger brother was born somehow makes it into this episode. Lots of fun to be had here. I haven't seen this episode, but this Sins video was great, and it also kind of made me like want to go check out this episode. So
the first few episodes of this season have sort of come back to earth, and they definitely feel like older Rick and Morty now. The last 2 seasons, I don't know what was going on with the last 2 seasons. In the end, it just wasn't funny, really. The last couple of seasons, there was one episode in particular that was really good. I thought maybe a couple sprinkled in that were good. So far, so good. Actually, I think on season 6. So
cool. That's good to hear. I'll get back into it. Some stuff you liked about the video?
It says Digestibot convert to nutrient mass, and then as the show drops a Deus Ex Machina and hopes we won't notice.
Perfect.
Then there's a magazine called Rolling Boner, and this is why all the magazines on this rack seem pretty sinful. My main issue is with Rolling Boner because it sounds painfully detached. Yes, indeed. And then Evil Rick or whatever is like, there's the clone you found, or maybe it's me all naked, just a little Kaiser Soze. He's like, this is not how you Kaiser Soze. This might be how you Terminator or 6th Day. And then in true fashion, like, wait, is that what happens in 6th Day? Did anyone actually watch 6th Day? I've lost my train of thought. Regardless, incorrect references to Kaiser Soze will always get you a sin. I don't make the rules. Oh, wait, actually I do. So here are 5 sins. Anytime you can go off on a tangent about some obscure movie that came out a long time ago, I always enjoy that. And I would 100% say that's got to be a Jonathan sin there, because he's going to come up with 6th Day in this scenario.
Well, and I feel like the 6th Day is one of those movies that I see all the time, like at disc resale shops. but I don't know that anybody has ever picked this movie up. Like, there's a reason why it's at these shops.
I think people's taste changed quite a bit during the 90s too, where Schwarzenegger wasn't, all these big one-man action stars and everything weren't as big anymore by the time the mid to late 90s came up. So
funnily enough, though, if you go to Schwarzenegger's IMDb page, The Sixth Day is one of the 4 in his known 4. So
yeah, we got to talk about that with the IMDb. You got to have a discussion with the IMDb about the known 4
Terminator 2 do. Terminator, sure. Last Action Hero, okay, not what I would pick.
Yeah, it's malpractice not to put Total Recall in there and True Lies. Even
if we're going for known 4, I mean, even Batman and Robin, like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah, very nice. That should take us into Thursday's video then. Final Destination. Congratulations, Chris. You and Jonathan writing on this as mentioned. This is my favorite video of the week. So,
okay.
Obviously, I had a lot of sins to like about this. This, I think, is one of the most, at the very least, it's the horror franchise I'm the most interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really a horror fan, but I really like the premise of this movie. I kind of watched these movies kind of growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't 5 watching this or whatever, but like middle school maybe.
Yeah.
And at least the first 3 and 5th movie are really solid. There's just that really awful The Final Destination.
Yeah.
But like 4 out of 5 is a good track record, especially for a horror franchise. And I think they're all pretty consistently like 7 out of 10s. None of them are excellent, but none of them are terrible. Maybe 2 is the standout as far as the best.
Yeah, it's got that big highway scene that everybody loves.
Yeah, the highway scene's great, and they like actually managed to like build on the rules in a unique and interesting way.
Yeah.
So that's good, but I really, really like this franchise. I think they're rebooting it, which is, I guess, good because I want more of these movies, but I don't know that it needed a reboot.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think about the franchise?
I generally like these movies. They know what they are. It gets to the point of almost being a comedy, which is why I don't know. I don't know if that's sustainable over the amount of movies that they made, because it just gets so ridiculous. Like, there's that one, I can't even remember which number this one was, but I think it might be 3, but they go into a salon or something, and it's like everything in that salon could end up killing them.
Yeah, that's 3.
Like, you know, they show this creaky ceiling fan that's like, you know, already about to fall off as it is, and there's like, you know, plugs, like all these plugs going into this thing where there's like, you know, maybe a coffee maker or sink or something next to it. It's just a lot of those things where it just shows you a whole bunch of stuff that could happen. And a lot of these are red herrings, and some of these are actually going to get combined in a way that you had no idea. So overall, I think these are fun. I like the premise of them. You know, always somebody that gets the premonition, and they have that key opening scene in every one of these movies where, you know, the third one was the roller coaster, and that one was fun.
Mm-hmm. The fourth one, even the fourth one had a cool destruction scene, but that was the like race car track.
Yeah, the race car track. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in general, I do like these. I kind of forgot about these movies though, and this is the reason why we hadn't done one until now, is that I just kind of forgot about it. Somebody mentioned a Final Destination, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, and I was like, oh yeah, we need to do a Final Destination movie. What the hell? Why have we not done one of these? So yeah, and
it feels perfect for a CinemaSins kind of video, because it really feels like this franchise is a 2000s franchise. I mean, I think this is a 2000 film, right?
It would have been like weird, like if they had tried to come out with, like, let's say that they didn't have the idea for this until like the following year, where 2001, you have September 11th and all that. Like, what if they had made this movie that year? Like, that might have changed the entire course of that franchise, because they may not have been able to come out with this. I mean, if they were about to had it release date in October or whatever, forget about it. They would have had to moved it,
either shelve it or completely reshoot it.
Yeah, they may have not been able to come out with this movie if it came out just a year later. So that's the kind of crazy stuff when you're watching this, you have this, oh, this is all pre 9/11, all the stuff that's happening in this, like going to the airport.
Well, and so that. I'm sure that makes it hard to send TSA, because TSA was not the most lax, but significantly more lax.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
the airport experience is totally different, but yeah, I think you're right also too, where this film, like the franchise kind of know what it is, because on 3 on the Blu-ray, you can actually do like a choose your own, like make your own choices, and it's kind of like on these alternate paths, and so like certain characters can actually survive. Like there's that douchebag character that gets killed in a drive-through where an engine comes through his head, and you can like make him survive, and then he's in the rest of the movie.
Wow. Like, so they actually shot this, or
yeah. So it's on the physical Blu-rays.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's pretty cool. You can't save everybody, and some people you can kill earlier, or at least they maybe died differently. But yeah, you can do that on the Blu-ray for 3. And then 5 is a perfect, like, they are so teasing the audience because kind of like you said, they go to a salon, but they show you like 50 different ways that somebody could die. And then it's like the most random thing. It's like, because it's like, oh, they barely survived the thing that should have killed them. Like, I think like, there's a guy getting acupuncture done. And so they show like a million different ways that this guy's going to die. And he's fine after whatever. But then, like, he slips on a small puddle of water and then lands on his back with all the needles. Like, it's
yeah.
That one's a lot of fun. But getting back to the sins, then now I got to sit here and watch Stuart Little. Why is that the only option? I'm glad this plane goes down, and yeah, there's a baby, but that baby would prefer a plane crash over Stuart Little.
Yeah. That's Jonathan as well. Even we were talking about movie references, and I saw the Stuart Little thing as well, but I was like, I don't really know what to say about it because I've never seen Stuart Little. I know that M. Night Shyamalan, I think, wrote on that. I
think so, yeah.
But I just that was one of those things where I just decided to skip writing anything about it, and then combining the scripts. Jonathan, of course, wrote something about Stuart Little, so I was like, yep, we definitely got to put that in there. So yeah.
Earlier when the song came on, Todd didn't give 2 shits about it. Oh wait, maybe he did. There's that other great poop joke.
I'm trying to remember if the punny nature of that joke happened because I was thinking of that scene, or if I just said I may have said he didn't care. I was thinking about, I think I was just saying he didn't care. And then I realized, oh, he's on the toilet during that scene. And then I was like, okay, he didn't give 2 shits about it. All right. And then that was the way it was going to be. I don't think I even thought about the double, the overhead double shot of 2 guys sitting on the toilet. And then I was like, oh, you could say he was giving 2 shits about it. That's one of those that are fun to write. It's just one of those that like where does that come from? A lot of times I'm actually trying to think about what came first and all that. The pun, what was I originally going to say? All that type of stuff. That was one of those. But yeah, that one turned out well.
Officer, I'd like to report this bus driver for being a drunken maniac, running over a girl who was clearly in the street for I definitely have time to break for her amounts of time. One of those things that is so has bothered me for so long, because that bus is moving well past whatever the speed limit is for that street. Because it's like downtown New York. Not New York City, but like a city in New York.
Right.
This is like a corner cafe. Like, surely the speed limit is 20, and that's at a 4-way intersection with 4 stop signs. That bus should not be going 200 miles an hour.
No, and this is I think this set off a chain of this kind of death happening in movies. People being run over, that's always been a thing, but the surprise out of nowhere, splatter the body all over the place, kind of that sort of happened. And they even made fun of it, and I think it was the comebacks, that David Koechner football. I think they made fun of that because there's like people in the middle of a football field getting run over by buses and stuff, and that. But like, something that always bothers me, obviously people do get hit by things all the time. They get hit by cars, buses, whatever, all the time. But it's usually because something has happened that was out of that person's control, and like the bus or whatever can't be possibly aware. But this girl sitting there in the middle of the street yelling.
She's at the very least on the curb, and the bus driver should be aware that she might take a step into the street.
Right. So yeah, it's one of those things. But movie moment wise, this was
awesome.
it's an awesome moment. And we wrote the pseudo sin in here because yes, there was a projectionist I knew at Hollywood 27 that when this scene came up, he went over to the volume knob and cranked it all the way. It goes all the way to 10, which is, I don't know. I think I guessed the decibels in the sin, but the typical decibel level for a movie is 75 to 85, I think. And so he would like crank it beyond the 85 decibel point when that bus hit and everything, and then he just turn it back down. And it's already a moment where people are jumping, so just imagine what it's like that, you know, it got cranked up at that moment or whatever. So
that's a lot of fun. I was gonna ask that. I figured like there's no way that's not a true story, so that's
yeah.
that guy's my hero.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just related to that same, but there's the train conductor. Like the train never stops moving even after it's clobbered the car, and so you're like, is the bus driver now a train conductor?
yeah. Now that one's another one where you're sitting there going, why? How could this be that somebody just doesn't care this much? You know, they saw this car on the tracks for a really long time, this train. And I think pretty much everywhere in the world, if there's a car on the track, the train's going to at least try to stop. And if it can't stop, so be it, but it's going to eventually stop.
Right.
This train just keeps going. And
which as is the reason Billy dies, because the train doesn't stop. And we don't see Death tinkering with the brakes on the train. So we have no reason to believe that that Death has. Maybe if we would have gotten a train conductor tries to pull the lever, but Death is doing something. Maybe, but
everybody outside of the main characters in this movie just live guilt-free. Apparently, they just like. I mean, the bus driver has ended a life, and that's going to be scarring for the rest of his life to know that he hit her that hard, whatever, and the train conductor too is probably. I mean, like everybody just gets to go on about their happy selves, and then everybody else has to worry about death the whole time. Yeah, it's just but yeah, that was a fun one too to think maybe the bus driver got a new job after this.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
I mean, that might be the sin of the week for me. Definitely is the sin of the week for me. That one just slayed me. Also, like, it's one of those things where I think so. We talked about how this franchise kind of like works because it's kind of self-aware and it's kind of a comedy, and so it has to set up these ridiculous things. But like the sin where it's at the teacher's house, and it's like, why go through all this thing to hope that a cracked mug leaves water on a computer monitor to maybe glow some glass shards, and then the glass shards don't even kill her; they just go in her neck. It's like, why not just make a knife float and stab her and then blow the house up? You did that anyway. Like, it's like, yeah, just blow the house. Like,
that's the interesting thing about this movie. Revisiting it, I always had this sort of thought that it was like stuff that they were in a situation that was already dangerous, and because Death wants things to happen, it just ramps things up a little bit more. It doesn't like actually physically do anything. Death doesn't actually guide anything, but like in that particular death scene, a lot of the stuff you're like, oh well, yeah, he's just trying to make it look like an accident, especially after the first death where the water comes out onto the floor,
right,
and makes that dude slip and fall, and then all that stuff wraps around his clothesline, wraps around him and hangs him,
and then the water dries up immediately.
Yeah, the water seeps back, so it's like, oh, he's trying to get away with it. Death doesn't want to but I'm sitting there going, you could just keep the water out. Nobody's going to sit there and think Death did this,
Right.
So it goes back and forth in that movie whether or not Death wants to make it look like an accident or whether.
But these movies are less fun if they are more serious, right? Like,
yeah.
Like it's funner because these are so ludicrous. It's scarier if it's just trying to point out, hey, you guys are really close to death every single day. If one little thing goes wrong, that's it. Like, that's a really scary movie. But these aren't scary. These are fun.
Yeah.
Alex realizes touching the knife was a bad thing to do, but then he just drops it at the crime scenes. Like, the fingerprints will disappear once the knife hits the floor.
It's just like, how can you be aware that being here is a bad thing for you? You're already being questioned by the FBI in this movie, and then you pick up a knife. That's why. I mean, okay, I can get you maybe picking up the knife, but then afterwards, not just dropping it there, you got to know that you've left your fingerprints at that point.
Well, and he grabs it exactly like you would hold a knife to stab somebody. It's like you're not going to grab it by the blade, or make sure you grab a towel first. How about don't pull the knife out, because what if it's holding an artery together? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Who has a cabin in the woods only a couple miles from their house? At that point, just live in the cabin.
Yep, Jonathan wrote that one. I was like, that. Yeah, exactly. Why do you have a cabin just 2 miles away? Yeah,
right. It's not like in upstate New York or whatever. It's like, because Alex can still get from the cabin to go save Clear in like 15 minutes. Like,
yeah.
And then because Carter almost got hit by a train and your car was about to be a bonfire, because that was the whole like, what if? How do we know? They're sitting there in Paris and they're like, how do we know this was all real? And they're like, well, because Carter almost got hit by a train.
Yeah.
You were about to be in a car that was about to become a bonfire. Like,
it's amazing how quickly they forget, right? If you're the filmmakers, I can see you saying, exactly. They did. They are thumbing their nose at death now. That's why death has suddenly come back for them.
You could.
But it is weird though that you don't think that you escaped, like you're that far along that you're like, oh yeah, well none of that was real. I mean, we almost,
well, and there's also the sins of. You're right. There's no way. Why would Carter go with them? Like he's still a douche at the end of the first 6 months. So unless he did a total 180, why is he going there? Which makes that last sin perfectly, where it's like, don't worry, I wouldn't tell him either.
yes.
Like, there's clearly enough time, and he just saved your life. Maybe return the favor. There's also the thing about why is the FBI just not pursuing Alex anymore? Like, they're gonna let him fly out of the country? Like, no way the FBI would let him do that, especially when there's a murder investigation with fingerprints on the murder weapon. Like,
yeah.
So,
like, of all the deaths that are in that, the teacher should be fully put on Devon Sawa in that movie.
Yeah. I didn't write these down again, but there's like a running gag of like, I shouldn't sin this for this franchise, but Alex survives this, and it's just like constantly. So I can't wait for when Final Destination 2 Sins video comes out, and you find out that Alex is killed by a falling brick. Like, where the sin is just going to be like, so he survived this and that and that and that, but a brick? Like,
yeah, that's what ends the guy. Well,
the worst off-screen death of all time.
A brick, yes.
Very nice.
One I wrote, this asshole kid has a poster of Pecker in his room. Pecker! And he doesn't have any other movie posters. Apparently Pecker is this guy, Scarface. Just an unusual poster to have up in a high school kid's room. I'm not too far removed from being in high school when Final Destination came out. So, like, I don't remember Pecker being a big deal, but maybe to a generation just past me, Pecker had kind of a following. I don't know. Todd says no to this because he wants one of these girls to sit next to him. Yeah, there's an interesting thing. I may have rewound this scene 100 times. There are 3 seats in the aisles, and the two girls that Todd wants to sit next to are asking to be able to sit there. Meanwhile, Alex is in the back because Todd wants to sit next to these 2 girls. So there's nobody else that they have to worry about. And I'm sitting there going, why doesn't Todd just say, hey, you can sit here and it's no problem. I'll just sit over here by the window or whatever.
Right.
And
Todd could be the third person in those set of 3.
Right. So instead of saying that, he says something about having some sort of bowel IBS or something like that. I'm like, I know you're in high school. I know you're not smooth yet. I understand. But why didn't the idea to just sit with them get into your head? Like, there's 3 seats. I don't know. The movie seems to be saying that there's only 2 seats there, but even though we can see 3 in the aisle, I don't know. They don't do much to show you that that's the case, but that it's one of those weird, bizarre things. Like, maybe it's not a sin, maybe it's just they want to sit together. They don't want to have anybody else next to them. And that's the request. But I just don't understand why Todd, that's where it comes down to. Why does Todd just say, feel free to sit next to me. I'm not gonna. This is totally fine. Instead, they make this big deal. It's not a big plot point, but it becomes somewhat of a plot point that they move seats.
Well, because that's how Alex realizes, like, oh, I wasn't. It's based on your assigned seats, not where you actually sit. And then
right.
And then there's a bunch of sins that are like, actually, who knows at this point, because the movie's so inconsistent. Like,
right. And so there's a lot of delving into how Alex even figures out like what the order is just from a diagram that he saw on television. And you're like, so you're saying on this one explosion here on this guy's seat that nobody else around them died? They had to wait until the big explosion happened. Like none of it. They just want to get to this order thing, in the movie. They're like, okay, this is the order, and you're just supposed to kind of like, oh yeah, okay, that's the order. That makes sense, and then you move on. But like when you're in a CinemaSins mode, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, how do you figure that out from this? You can't really. Oh yeah, Jonathan wrote, I guess 5th build on Roswell wasn't enough cred to get you past the 17-minute mark in a 2000 horror film. Yeah, this movie in 2000 is definitely built on a lot of WB shows and people who had just started making it big in the late 90s. Jonathan wrote, also, did he just come out of a fucking cave talking about Tony Todd? And this is something I didn't even notice when I watched it.
I didn't either.
I was combining the script and I was like, right, what out of a cave? What does he mean? And I went back to the movie, that part of the movie. And I was like, holy shit. He does seem to be coming out of a cave there.
He does.
And then you wonder, that's not really a cave. Did they mean to do this? Is it just some part of the set that just looks, I don't know. Does it look like a cave? I don't know. It was
I like
really
to think
weird.
It's a portal from Candyman.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best way to look at it, really, when it comes down to it. I think we combined on this one, combined a sin. This is also, let's rewind. When Terry started his rant, you can see a bulldozer or crane. I love this part of the job of CinemaSins. Trying to figure out, a lot of times you don't have any idea. You will never know because there's not enough angles. There's not enough anything to prove your point. But in this scene where Terry gets hit by the bus, you can see a bulldozer and another thing blocking the street from where the bus would be coming from. So there's definitely no way a bus is speeding through the intersection at that point and crashing into somebody. And you can't you can't infer like, well, maybe they're turning or anything like that. No, they're not turning.
Way too fast to turn.
Yeah. So that was a fun thing to discover in the background of this is maybe you say something to the effect of, yeah, exactly. It came out of nowhere.
I like to think that the same portal that brought in Tony Todd from Candyman brought in the bus from Speed.
Yeah, we are just now
straight from the highway to go clobber a girl and then straight back into, Speed.
We are now giving absolutely rational explanations for the filmmakers of their movie 22 years later that,
I bet you a filmmaker is listening to this right now and be like, somebody finally understood.
Yeah, exactly. The John Denver Greatest Hits album starting with Rocky Mountain High. This one was fun to do just because it allows you, if you're of the mind, you can go in and do research on John Denver Greatest Hits albums and see if Rocky Mountain High started any of the sides of any album. And I went on a big, huge, went through a lot of John Denver's old stuff and didn't find one where it could have opened it up. So
I was going to ask, that was one of the things I asked was it heaven or hell doing that? Because I got to imagine if you're a John Denver fan, it's fun. If you're not, and then it's probably like, well, now it's just tedious discography. And he's such a popular artist that died relatively young and relatively long ago. So there's got to be a lot of greatest hits albums that have come out because his legacy. And that she's listening to it on a vinyl in 2000, by the way. People didn't listen to stuff on vinyl in 2000.
Yeah, but it was her mom's favorite.
But it was her mom's favorite, right? And and so it's like, but because it's the vinyl, you have the B-side. I thought, there's got to be a lot of John Denver greatest hits.
Yeah, so hell is right. Hell is the correct answer because here's the thing. When you Google something like this, obviously the big one is what's going to come up on Google, the 1973 Greatest Hits album, which is what generally we think this one is that she's putting on. And so I looked that one up, and Rocky Mountain High, like, first off, you have to do this thing where it's like, well, it's not the first song. Okay, it's not the first song on the first side. Is it the first song on the second side? That's the next thing that you got to do. So, like, you have to go and actually find what the album did, not what a CD would have done.
She doesn't drop the pin in the middle. Like, she very clearly starts it at the end. So it had to be the first track. It can't be she's skipping to it.
And it's up there it's on the song titles. It says number 1, Rocky Mountain High.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, we talked about this so a little bit, but so Wade, Clear, and Alex are just cool with Carter now, so much so that mere 6 months later, they go on a whole ass trip to Paris with him. Carter was never cool in this movie, was never their friend, and man, he must have done a 180 during those 6 months for this to happen. And yes, Carter himself brings up how weird it is later, but he didn't earn his trip to Paris at the end.
And especially, like, if Alex and Clear are a couple, which the Sins point out, they must have been secretly dating the whole time because she calls him babe like halfway through the movie.
And she is, because that's an interesting thing I saw, like, in the behind the scenes of this movie. After I got done, I was like, I'm going to look at the behind the scenes on this. There's cut scenes where they actually have a romantic moment on the beach when she goes to find him.
It's so weird.
And they actually have there's a sex scene, it's not like, full blown R-rated sex scene, but it's implied they have sex. And then she gets pregnant, and there's a whole different ending to the movie where he dies. She gives birth to his son. And there's this whole thing at the end where she's with her son, like, holding her son and looking at a memorial to Alex. And then Carter shows up, and then they have a similar conversation that they do in the cafe. But yeah.
And then a brick falls and kills Carter.
Then a brick falls and kills Carter. Those are always interesting things when they cut scenes and then they have things that refer to them that are still left in the original movie. She's calling him baby all the way through. And it's so odd because they're not dating in that movie at all, but they are dating in the uncut version.
So if they are dating, Carter would be the third wheel.
Yeah.
Why do you want to go to Paris with a couple? Like,
right. Yeah.
the city of love with,
yeah. You just lost your girlfriend 6 months ago.
And the bus driver is apparently working back at a bus driver in Paris this time though. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. That'll take us to Friday's video. Cloak versus Tuna Melt. You wrote on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Before we kick off the video, I just kind of wanted to know, is the only question I had for you. What's it like writing Sins? Since you're the narrator for Commercial Sins, what's it like writing Sins? It's supposed to be the same narrator, just different voices. So what's it like just writing Sins more for your own voice?
Yeah, I don't do anything different than I would do for Jeremy, but the one thing that I do know that when I'm writing for Commercial Sins is that I can maybe get away with writing something in a weird way and know exactly how I want to say that thing. Whereas when I'm writing for Jeremy, a lot of times he'll interpret it the way that you thought. Sometimes he'll do it in a way that you didn't think, and it's fine. And then others where it's like, okay, this is completely wrong. We need to get a new reading of this. But like in this case, writing for myself, I'll write something and I'll be like, well, I know I can do something with this. And like, I'll add an extra something, inflection, or make this line a little bit weirder and all, maybe a little bit more off kilter than normal because I know how I'm going to read it. So it's just more of an assurance when I write for Commercial Sins than anything. It's no different, really. I would write the same stuff for Jeremy if he were narrating these. So yeah, there's not any difference really.
How do you pick Sins to sin during Commercial Sins?
Well, this one in particular was because on our Discord, someone brought this video up. We had some suggestions when we first started the channel, and went through a bunch of those. And there's a bunch of requests that are still out there.
Yeah. And
sometimes people on the team will be like, hey, I saw this commercial. Does anybody want to send it? And usually the person who brings it up is the one who ends up sending it. But on this one, there wasn't any like thing ready in the chamber for us to do. It wasn't like, hey, we got to do that commercial. I did this on Monday. On Monday, I was looking at some stuff and I was like, hey, does anybody have any ideas for commercials? And Jonathan sent me one and I was like, I don't watch the video, and I was sitting there going, I guess we could do a thing or two with this, but it's not really calling to me. I went through Discord and I saw a couple there. There was one, I was like, that would be funny to do, but sometimes a commercial is so bizarre and so out there that there's not much to make fun of anymore. Like, there's a one joke premise in this one thing and it's insane. There's not a lot of like, why does he do this? Or why does he do, there's not much to that. And I scrolled a little bit more and I finally found this Doctor Strange one. And I was watching that one. I was like, yeah, there's a lot you can take apart on this one, because this is just like doing a movie. So yeah, Monday sat there and wrote on this. We went through the commercial about 3 times and wrote sins for it, and then narrated it right after. And then
let's see. I think I'd like you to kick off the sins for this video.
This shot of New York City establishes that we're about to watch a very long commercial about fucking Tide Pods. And I'm sure there's like the 30-second version of this, but I watched the minute-long one, and this is one of those commercials where it's like it's a minute long, so they have time to give you an establishing shot. The one that I rewound and watched a bunch to get to this sin is the mannequin sin. When it's talking about, is this guy a mannequin? Now, to be clear, I don't think that they put a mannequin next to this kid. I don't think they did.
It'd be funny if it was, though.
Well, and there's even a part, and I was like, oh man, I can see this guy's face move, and maybe I can't write this. I ended up writing it anyway because because the guy stands so perfectly still. His hand is just sitting there with the plate with the pizza on it. And it's like and nothing moves. It's in the same position the entire time. And it's so eerie and odd. They don't ever establish who this guy is or anything. He's just standing next to the kid. And I guess he's there because they don't want to make it look like the kid is there by himself out in the middle of New York or something. Maybe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was fun to talk about this mannequin and then have an excuse to bring up the movie Mannequin and Weekend at Bernie's, both movies that Andrew McCarthy are in, and tell him that someone needs to get this man Kim Cattrall stat and tell Andrew McCarthy to get the hell out of here. There's probably 3 people on the earth that'll get that joke, and everybody else is going to be like, why did he go on this big Kim Cattrall, Andrew McCarthy, whatever? What does that have to do with anything? That's just me.
I didn't get it, but I do now.
That's just me being nerdy about films, and Andrew McCarthy being in both Weekend at Bernie's and Mannequin. So yeah, that was a lot of fun to write, and that's all I wrote on this.
Yeah, I put down. So first of all, I put down. I just love that the Commercial Sins intro still has the spoiler warning.
Yeah, which is funny. I review 2 or so of these every month. But like, I didn't notice that at first. I was like, I told the editors, I was like, do we always put spoiler things on the commercial sins? And they're like, yes, we do. I was like, oh, I didn't even remember that. I didn't even know we did that. The first video, by the way, did have a carryover from some other video. So it said in 27 minutes or less on the first video that I saw. So I was like, that definitely we have to cut out.
Yeah.
Even though technically we're true. It will be done. It will be done in less than 27 minutes. So anyway, yeah, that was an interesting thing. We have spoiler alerts.
It's just funny for me every time.
Yeah.
Let's see. It is really disappointing that we don't see the Cloak versus Tuna fight, because you're right. The title implies that we'll see a Cloak fight a Tuna melt, and we don't. No shit, the Cloak doesn't want to go into the washing machine. You're in a temple of fucking magic.
Yes.
There's not a spell for that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not often that you have product placement inside an advertisement, but here we are.
I was focused on this thing on the Tide Pod that says 3-in-1 on it. And I was like, well, you got 2-in-1, you got Doctor Strange, and they got 3-in-1, like cleaning power is what what they mean. But in the commercial, I was like, do they have a 3-in-1 for the commercial to kind of make it parallel? And I was like, there's only 2. And I was going to send them for that. And I was like, wait a minute. No, they actually do have a real pizza place in here. So I just went off on that, having product placement inside of an ad.
Yeah, it works. And then this the whole point of the commercial is to try to get you to buy Tide Pods. And I'm no Cloak, but I still don't know why the Cloak prefers pods over detergent. Like,
yeah.
You're
just going to be thrown around in a washer anyway. I thought that was the original intent of this commercial, is that you didn't want to go in the washer in the first place.
And it's not like Wong only has like generic ass up and up detergent, or it's not like he has something different. No, it's like he has Tide. It just doesn't have pods. So
yeah,
I guess Tide is also like not advertising for themselves, I guess.
Anyway. Yeah.
They're saying don't buy our regular stuff, but still buy our stuff.
Right.
Nice. All right, well, that'll do it for the content this week. Lots of good stuff. That'll take us to Behind the Sinner.
So tell me about yourself.
We're all sinners. Every one of us.
And what happens to sinners?
Get to know each other better, you know?
See, Daddy, sinners have soul too.
The information, it's too much.
Walk away, March, just walk away.
So questions I've been asking everybody as they've been coming on for this first round is, if you had to describe CinemaSins to somebody who had never heard of the channel, how would you do it in a sentence or two?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that happens quite a bit. Especially at a poker table, if someone's like, what do you do? And then I have to go, I run a YouTube channel. And they're like, oh, what is it? And like, it's CinemaSins. We make fun of movies. It's pretty much all I ever say. I don't go far into it at all. But basically, the spirit of this question, I would say, like, we make fun of movies. We have a sarcastic critic who is an asshole to movies during narration over actual film clips, basically, is what it just comes down to. But a lot of times people, I hate saying critiques because we're not critics. People a lot of times will know that I do this and then like, well, what's the latest one that you reviewed? And I'm like, I know what you mean. I'm not going to sit here and correct you that we review movies or do anything that's hard criticism, but our next one is this one, or we just got done with that one or whatever. So anyway, a lot of times people have a misunderstanding of what we do, but that's fine.
And then channel's been around for almost 10 years. So and we've already established you're a co-creator, so you've been on since the very beginning. So literally the entire catalog to choose from. Do you have a favorite sin or two, like one of those that has just really stuck out to you? I think Daniel described it best last week when he said, like, I wrote this sin once, or I guess it could be I saw this sin once, and I've aspired to write that every single video again. Or do you have just favorite running gags?
I mean, at this point, it's tough for me to remember the very best ones or whatever. I have several ranty ones that I like over the years that let's talk about the villain's plan type of sins are some of my favorite ones. But one that I thought of the other day was this thing from Chamber of Secrets. And it basically this big, long, it's probably the longest sin we have ever written. And I won't go through the whole thing, but really it's how criminally unsafe Hogwarts is in Chamber of Secrets and how they don't do anything. And I remember going through this movie way back in the day, and I don't remember, it must have been 2013, 2014 when we did this video, talking about how at the very beginning of this movie, there's already a huge danger. Dumbledore knows there's a huge danger. And then we need to make sure these kids are safe. Already sort of saying we need to ramp up security and all this other stuff. Next scene, there's somebody who's petrified in the next scene. And it's like, okay. And so then right after that, Dumbledore says something pretty much the same, like, oh, now it's really ramped up. We're going to have to do even more. And then nothing really happens the whole movie. Nothing happens. And so this sin sort of spans the entire movie. They realize that they're in danger, but they don't do anything the entire time. They just acknowledge it, and it makes it look like they care, but like they obviously don't care at Hogwarts at all that this stuff is happening. They're not doing anything to keep anybody safe. And it takes until like the way at the very end where teachers are supposed to escort them everywhere and all that and everything. That's one of my favorite ones because and we were still editing our own videos at the time when this one came out. To be able to get it where, Jeremy Wright says the whole thing and we're editing it and showing all the different footage and proving it basically as we go along. those are my favorite kinds of sins. We did another one later in Azkaban talking about the time travel stuff and that, although that one was controversial. But anyway, I love those more than anything when we can go through this big long thing, show a whole bunch of footage that proves it, quote unquote, and then it becomes this big long ranty sin, and you're like, yeah, by the end of it, yeah, totally. What's going on here? This is, so that's probably one of my favorite ones.
Nice. Yeah, and I can see you must have just copied this from the notes because you're like you got timestamps and
this was like I went back deep into the emails and found that script and just copy pasted it on there.
Nice. I do remember that one. I do think I can only imagine how long that took to edit together. But the last question I haven't been asking everybody this one, but as a co-creator, CinemaSins turns 10 here pretty soon. You mentioned 10 weeks from now ish, not the exact date, but the week of. So congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to ask, what are some of the things that you've been thinking about as you've been like approaching this milestone?
I mean, when you get to this point, you think about how it all began, sort of all the evolution of things, and I've been trying to compile this long list of credits that, of who wrote what on each of these videos. Right now, this is an out-of-date number, but 960 everything wrong with videos, according to my last thing. Now, that's way more now because I haven't updated it in about a month. So there should be about 8 to 10 more CinemaSins videos specifically that are added to that. So we're getting close to the 1,000th one. And we have made enough at this point where I would be interested to know if people can think that, oh, this doesn't count. Like when we come out with our 1,000th one, and I'm not even sure I'll be able to know which one that is when the 1,000th one comes out. I know it's in the next month or two. We'll probably be doing our 1,000th one of these very specific. It'll be interesting to me to figure out if there's like a hardcore fan out there who is like, no, this can't count as the 1,000th one. It has to be this one because, and he gives me a whole bunch of different reasons why.
You're just giving somebody listening ammo to like.
Yeah, I mean, because what do you consider? Like we've done some April Fools, and we've done some
compilations.
Some yeah, so like. What do you call the officials? But anyway, neither here nor there. So you think about how it all started and how impossible it all seemed. I was working movie theaters when we first came out with a video, and then it took off, and we came out with one every week after that. And then after about 4 or 5 months, I was able to quit movie theaters and all that. And you always had that like, man, I don't know if I want to quit this job yet because who knows how long this CinemaSins stuff is going to last and all that. So you think about all that stuff, where you were years ago. And yeah, we're in the next 10 weeks, we will have resends. Jeremy has already tweeted this, I believe. We are going to be resending movies that we've already sent. Now, we had a long philosophy never to do resends because that was what our work was back in the day, and it stands alone. But there's been enough interest in doing these old ones that we used to come out with 3 or 4 minute videos for, to do it in the modern style. So we picked 10 movies that we have done before, and we're gonna do resends of them. They're gonna come out every Saturday coming up next, all the way to December 13th or so, which is the real anniversary date. I think December 13th is. It's either 12th or the 13th. I can't remember which one.
The Spider-Man video launched.
Yeah, the Amazing Spider-Man video was the first one. So on December, whatever that week is, that December 13th, 12th, or whatever falls on, that'll be the last one of those. And then it does open the door for maybe doing resends in the future, but I don't, just right now I'm sitting there thinking, nah, we're not going to do that often. It's just a special thing we're doing for the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, as a fan, congratulations for 10 years.
Thank you.
Being able to support 7 full-time people as well, I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And providing 10 years of 1,000 videos of laughs. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a fan, thank you. It's an exciting time. So yeah, even as a fan. So yeah, so that's awesome. So I wanted to do one more thing during this Behind the Center segment. Everybody's kind of getting their own personal touch to this, and so Chris, I really miss hearing rants from the Sincast, and so I thought surely it's been not quite a year since last Sincast. There's been Recatopia, of course, but surely you have to be mad about something.
I actually, there's been times where I've gone and been like, boy, this would be a really good rant if we still did these. And I've forgotten a couple of them, but there's one recently that I hate. And if you're a big person, if you're a big sports person at all, if you like football at all, especially, one of the things that I can't stand, and I understand what kind of culture we live in. After 2 weeks, everybody's ready to say, this team is this team. Nobody's going to beat this team. But especially, I don't think it's so much the good teams that I worry about. It's the ones that people consider bad immediately. A team starts off 0-2. They're like, oh, what happened there? They're 0-2. Oh, geez, and everything.
They'll never win a game again. Yeah.
Right. It looks like, and being, Tennessee Titans fan was hearing about Derrick Henry and like, oh, he looks slow. He doesn't look good anymore. He's blah, 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 blah. And I'm like sitting there going, okay, look, I can't refute that. However, just know that nobody does preseason anymore. None of the big players really do preseason anymore. They play 3 games and it's all the people hoping to make the team that do preseason. And then game 1 happens. And you have these weird games like last year, Green Bay played Miami or somebody like that, or New Orleans, and like lost 38-0. And everybody was like, whoa, what happened to Green Bay? Green Bay was like, and Green Bay goes on and goes to like 13-3 on the season or something after that huge loss.
The same thing happened this year. Green Bay lost the first game and everybody's like, oh, the Bears are going to beat them this year. It's like, they were never going to.
No. I get unnecessarily upset when I start hearing people making proclamations early in the season about this and that. And I'm like, you don't know. You won't know until week 8, maybe 9 or so, what a team is at this point. There's some teams that look bad. Yeah. But sometimes there's injuries that you're not aware of how big those injuries are. Mm-hmm. They get a person back midway through the season. Suddenly they're awesome. And it's like, oh, what happened to them? What the coach must have really said something. No, they got somebody back that you don't, we have our name players that we know. Right. And some of these guys in the NFL are just no names, but they are the guys who are they're the ones that are like, that make your team like go a lot of times. And we don't know, like offensive linemen. So anyway, that would be my rant today. I'm sure that there's others that I could think of, but that's something that recently been bothering me is people making these huge proclamations after 2 weeks and thinking that there's any like real, there's a reality to this. Like, wait till week 8.
I could go on a rant, but I think for the sake of time, I will choose to be calm this week.
All right.
That will leave us with one more thing to take care of. Let's move on to Beyond the Sins.
To infinity and beyond!
Somewhere beyond my wild history.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Chris, let's start with you. What is that one thing that you want to recommend, warn, or reca-warn?
I can reca-warn Amsterdam, the new David O. Russell movie. I reca-warn it. There's probably more recommend than warn, but it's almost 50-50. A lot of times you'll see a movie where you're like, I see what you're doing, and I think you even made the movie that you wanted to here. But there are some things about it that just don't hit you right. They're not built up right, or there's something just a little bit off about what you're trying to do. But Amsterdam is a sort of a murder mystery movie with Christian Bale as a doctor who is a World War I veteran, and he's made friends with a bunch of people from World War I, and a general that I can't remember if it was a general or not, but general played by Ed Begley Jr. shows up dead, and his daughter, played by Taylor Swift, says, I would like you to be in on the autopsy and tell me if there was anything wrong, anything pops up that may be, not on the level. And they do the autopsy, and sure enough, they find out that he's probably been poisoned. The movie just is wild. Christian Bale's great in it, and he's playing an oddball kind of character and everything. The movie plays a lot of stuff for laughs. It's kind of a comedy. It's mostly a comedy. And there are so many stars in this movie. There are times where you're trying to count how many Oscars are in the room.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is pretty fun overall. I don't think it's going to be a hit at all, but I think people might discover it when it hits video and streaming and stuff like that, where it'll have like a bit of a cult following, because there's just enough good stuff here to say you won't be terribly disappointed watching this. It's gotten pretty bad reviews. I can understand that, but I think given some time.
So lower your expectations and go to a discount night, go to a matinee performance, and you'll be all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it had some like 33% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. That makes it sound like it's just atrocious. And there's going to be people who do think this is atrocious because there's scenes in it where you're like, what is going on in this movie? Anyway, that'd be my reca-warn.
Very nice. Well, I had a fun idea. I thought I have a movie that I want to talk about. I thought we could revive Guess the Goofs a little bit.
Okay.
And I will say whether I am recommending warning or reca-warning afterwards. But I thought this would be fun. So I will tell you that the movie is a film released between 2000 and 2010 in an even numbered year.
Okay. There's
your window.
Okay.
The first goof I have for you. So if you're unfamiliar with the game, I'll read off 4 goofs from IMDb's goofs page, and then Chris will guess it whenever he feels confident. But because we're not doing it in a full game style, I think it's just he'll want to guess it whenever he's confident. So The first goof is Napoleon did not isolate himself on the tiny island of St. Helena. He was there and kept under guard until his death. There is also no evidence that he tried to poison himself.
I feel like I may be able to get this on the first try, but so we're not doing the traditional guess the goofs here. If I answer and I'm wrong,
you just get the next goof.
You just get the next clue, right?
Yeah.
Is it The Count of Monte Cristo?
It's not, but I did watch that movie recently and love it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. That's a good guess.
Yeah.
That would have been like a fourth goof. That's maybe a little too obvious. The idea is that the more goofs you get, with the last one, you should be able to get it. A main character says that the croissant was invented in Romania. It was actually invented in Austria in the 13th century and perfected as the croissant in Paris in the early 19th century.
The croissant. Okay, so Napoleon and croissant. So it sounds like we're in France. Huh. Let's go to the next one.
In the office towards the beginning of the movie, a character mentions a Twilight Zone episode named Nightmare at 30,000 feet. The episode is actually named Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
Let's see. Office at the beginning. Office at the beginning. And then Okay, let's go to the last one.
Customs and Border Protection officers are not issued denial stamps for the admission inspection process.
Oh. See now. Oh, okay. Mission and denial. Man, there's no way I'm getting this. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know if I could even give a guess, like Euro Trip?
No, probably a pretty good guess though.
Could be. Oh well, I guess I'll guess a couple more before you tell me. But
yeah,
no, it's not going to be Ocean's 12. But Ocean's 12 is another one I thought of.
Probably a decent guess. Yeah.
But I don't think they didn't go to France in that. They went to like Italy or something in Ocean's 12. So yeah, go ahead.
The Terminal.
Oh Jesus! Yeah, there's no way I would have gotten this. I saw this movie when it came out, and I haven't seen it since.
So this is exactly part of the reason why I watched this movie was because I was guesting on a friend's podcast, and he's going through Spielberg's filmography, and I was like, well, The Terminal is a movie that nobody's thought about. It came out in 2004, so it's a movie that nobody's thought about since 2005.
Yeah.
It's great. Like, it's really good. It's really charming. It's really funny. Tom Hanks is giving a great performance. Very like Catch Me If You Can kind of vibes from Spielberg. John Williams doing a great score that is both Eastern European and jazz. It's a really great movie. The goofs at the end there would have been like that. I thought would have hopefully given it away would have been The Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, as well as you combine that with Customs Denial.
There would have been no chance. I mean, I would not. I mean, The Terminal is a movie, like I said, I saw it one time. I haven't seen it since, but like
it's common.
Weirdly got a cult following too. It's not one of Spielberg's all timers, you know. So like a lot of people like just kind of poo-pooed that movie when it came out.
If it was made by anybody else, it would be considered among their best. But because it's Spielberg, like it's obviously no Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan, but like it's a really solid film.
Yeah. But I was sitting there thinking about, oh, these are people going on a trip and they're, you know, it's what, you know, I wasn't thinking about The Terminal for sure. So yeah, I mean, those, if you're well versed on The Terminal, like you've seen it like in the last 5 years or something, maybe you would be able to, those last couple of clues would probably give it away. I would say if you're up on, you know, if you've been watching it recently. So, sure. Yeah.
The Terminal, full on recommend. Really enjoyed it.
I have to watch it again.
If you are like Chris or I, having not seen it since 2004, it's really worth a watch. I think it's on Stars right now, but it's I just rented it. It's like $4. So really high recommend for me, The Terminal. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks again to Chris for hanging out. I had a great time. So,
yeah, thanks. Thanks for doing this, and happy to come on and talk some shop. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the plan is to get every writer once every 7 weeks. We'll get every writer, and then it'll just reset, and then everybody gets a window of 7 weeks. Try to get whoever is writing on a lot of that week. I don't think that's going to happen next week because Danae and Jeremy are the two left over, and neither of them are big writers on this week. So I think the plan is to have Danae next week. So yeah, we'll have you on in about sometime in the next 9 weeks, and gives you some time to find a new rant to get mad about something.
Yep.
But is there anywhere that you want to promote for people to connect with you? I mean, you're on Recatopia every week.
Yeah, I mean, Recatopia. I mean, these days, if you want to get on the CinemaSins Discord, you can message me through that. It's no longer required to get a code to get on the Discord. So if you want to ask Jeremy or CinemaSins Twitter something, Jeremy might pass it along to me, but I don't read the messages or anything. So I used to do the Facebook thing when we had Sincast, but I've moved away from Facebook almost totally. Yeah. So yeah, there's still a Sincast Facebook, but don't try to get me there. I'm not going to find it. So
sure. You can connect with Chris Recatopia live on Twitch every week now. So free to everybody, not just patrons. And yeah, check CinemaSins Discord. There's a link in this episode description if you want to check it out. You can follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd at Schweitcastle, and I'd love to hear your feedback on how you think the show's going so far. And then any sins that you would like to hear more about. You can DM the CinemaSins Twitter at CinemaSinsBTS, or you can email bts@cinemasins.com. Lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're listening to. And come on back next week for more Behind the Sins content.
Thanks for listening. Send any feedback to bts@cinemasins.com, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment. Find more ways to connect by visiting cinemasins.com/BTS.
Okay, now let's take a look at how negligent this school is. After Filch's cat is petrified, Dumbledore says he strongly recommends caution. At this point, there should at least be some beefed-up security and possibly some education about petrification. Now the school's Jimmy Olsen is petrified, Dumbledore now says,
our students are in great danger. Tell them Hogwarts is no longer safe. It is, as we feared. The Chamber of Secrets has indeed been opened again.
The answer? Let's teach students self-defense techniques. But not against some possible monster, which might know something like, I don't know, petrification, but against each other, and using this dumbass Lockhart, who by this time everyone knows is a fraud. And of course they learn nothing, except that Harry can speak Parseltongue. The school forgets about that no longer safe decree, nobody patrols the halls, Voldemort can apparently just guide Ginny Weasley around the school's halls petrifying cats and wizards and painting messages in blood, and there isn't one person who ever witnesses it. Now it's business as usual again, and this kid Justin gets petrified. Dumbledore knows it's not Potter. Now there's been 3 incidents, but there's still no evacuation of the school and still no extra security. The Gryffindor house is ransacked, and who does Neville go to? Well, he goes to Harry, because not one adult here seems to give a f*** about anything. I mean, these assholes were about to play Quidditch again, and there's a monster crawling around in the school, but it gets canceled because Hermione is now petrified. So now a cat and 3 people have been petrified, and the school remains open, and not one kid is scared of shit in this entire school, and they're casually sitting around in their dorms without a care in the world. Then there's this ludicrous new set of rules that come out. Be back at your house by 6. Okay, whatever. But every student will be accompanied by a teacher to every lesson? Sorry, no way that happens. Did you see how many teachers are at this school? No? Well, McGonagall makes an announcement that the students need to go back to their dorms, and all the teachers come up to the second floor corridor where they can see the new message. Do you see how many people show up? It's 6, including a dwarf. And this asshole Filch. We find out Ginny Weasley's been taken by the monster, and only now does McGonagall say,
"Students must be sent home. I'm afraid this is the end of Hogwarts."
But they forget about all that once Lockhart shows up, telling him he finally has a chance to slay the beast, knowing full well he doesn't have the ability. Is an evacuation ordered? Of course not.
Am I getting through to you, Alma? You know, that type of thing.
Well, there's like, what, 3 good vampire movies out there total?
It might be right. It might be true. And 2 of them are called Nosferatu.
I was going to just make a joke and saying 2 of them are in the Twilight Saga, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen any of them.
Oh, my God. And we've been explaining the filmmakers the whole time, so why we'll start here.
As much as I want to make sense of the filmmakers, I think that we've given more thought to this movie than the filmmakers have.
Yeah.
I think that was like 45 minutes on Final Destination, but
yeah, I think so. I think that's correct.
I think it's still a commercial. I think you could do the Nicole Kidman AMC intro.
Oh, yeah, probably could.
I think it's about time for that.
In Google, I put in Doctor Strange Magic Place, and it comes up with the Sanctum Sanctorum right off.
All right, well, that'll do it for the content this week. Lots of good stuff. 2 hours later. That'll take us to Beyond the Sinner. Nope, that's not it. I can only imagine how long that took to edit together, but probably about as much time as it will take to edit this podcast.
Yes. Yeah, she was in, was it Valentine's Day? She was in one of those.
Oh, that's not a movie.
Okay, you're right.